She believed their love was unshakable. And it was, until 2 babies, sleepless nights, and the slow erosion of self left her a shadow of the woman he had fallen for. Lee Min said nothing. Instead, he looked elsewhere. But the truth has a way of finding you, even in a salon chair, sitting inches from the woman your husband has been calling at midnight. What follows is not just a story about betrayal. It is a story about a woman who looks in the mirror and chooses herself. About a man who almost let the best thing in his life slip away in silence. And about 2 people who decide, bruised and honest, to find their way back to each other. Love, loss of self, and the courage to begin again. Lee Min was not born into anything easy. He came into the world in a small apartment on the edge of Seoul. No silver spoon. No family name that meant anything. No shortcut waiting for him on the other side of morning. His father worked the docks and his mother cleaned houses in richer neighborhoods, coming home each evening with tired hands and a smile she kept warm just for him. They were not wealthy, but they were proud, and they raised him to be the same. By the time Lee Min was 17, he had already decided that poverty was simply a condition, not a sentence. He watched, he learned, he listened. He stayed close to men who moved differently, who spoke in low voices in dark rooms and made decisions that shifted entire cities. He was not reckless. He was strategic. He understood that power was not taken loudly. It was assembled quietly, piece by careful piece. By 23, he had made his first real move. By 26, his name carried weight in circles that most people did not even know existed. By 28, Lee Min sat at the head of a table that his enemies feared and his allies respected. He had a single tattoo on the left side of his neck. A small, elegant serpent coiled mid-strike, inked in black so precise it looked like a brushstroke from an old painting. His right ear held a simple silver ring, modest but deliberate. He was the kind of man people described differently depending on how much they knew about him. Strangers called him handsome. Business partners called him brilliant. Rivals called him dangerous. People who loved him, and there were very few, called him Min. He met Bianca on a Thursday. He had been leaving a restaurant after a late meeting. His coat collar turned up against the October chill, when he nearly walked directly into her. She had been standing at the curb checking her phone with that particular kind of focus, the kind where the whole world disappears, and when she looked up and found him inches away, she stumbled backward. He caught her arm without thinking. For a moment they just stared at each other. She was beautiful in a way that was not loud about itself. Deep brown skin, long straight curly hair that fell past her shoulders, dark eyes that held both amusement and caution. She wore a simple burgundy coat and carried herself the way people do when they are comfortable in who they are but do not need anyone else to confirm it. "Sorry," she said first, already pulling her arm back politely. "Are you all right?" he asked. "You walked into me?" she pointed out, but she was almost smiling. "You were standing in the middle of the pavement," he said. She tilted her head. "That is technically still a legal place to stand." He laughed, a real one, not the polished social kind he kept on hand for meetings. It surprised even him. Her name was Bianca. She came from an average household, a family that lived honestly and warmly and never had too much but never went without love. She worked at a small interior design company, had 3 best friends she was fiercely loyal to, and made the best jollof rice he would ever taste in his life. A fact he would not discover until their 5th date, but would think about often afterward. They dated for 8 months before he told her the full truth of what he did. He had expected her to leave. Instead, she sat very still for a long time, looking at him carefully with those dark, steady eyes, and then said, "I need you to be honest with me. Always. About everything. Can you do that?" He said yes, and he meant it. They married on a warm Saturday afternoon the following spring, in a small ceremony with only the people who mattered. Bianca wore ivory, her long curly hair swept up with a few loose strands framing her face. Li Min wore black, the serpent tattoo just visible above his collar, his silver earring catching the light when he turned to watch her walk toward him. He did not cry, but his jaw tightened in a way that anyone who truly knew him understood. Their first year of marriage was warm and complete. Not perfect, no honest marriage is, but rich with the small, private things that matter. Morning coffee shared without speaking, arguments that ended in laughter, the particular comfort of knowing someone's habits so well that you could navigate each other in the dark. Bianca kept the house beautiful. She had a gift for it, colors, textures, the way light fell through a window at a certain angle. Li Min would come home from long, heavy days to find a candle lit on the kitchen counter and something cooking on the stove, and it always reset something in his chest that the world spent all day tightening. He told her she was the only soft thing in his life. She told him he was the most stubborn man she had ever loved. Both of these things were completely true. Then Bianca got pregnant. Li Min received the news in his office. When she called him, her voice careful and bright with something she was trying to contain, he went so quiet that she asked 3 times if he was still there. Then he said, "I'm on my way home," and hung up, left a room full of people mid-sentence, and drove himself home for the first time in months. Their daughter was born 7 months later, small and round-cheeked and furious at being handled, with a scream that made the nurses in the delivery room raise their eyebrows. They named her Hannah. It meant flower in Korean and also happened to mean one, and she was quite thoroughly their entire world. Bianca took to motherhood with the same quiet dedication she gave to everything she loved. But somewhere around Hannah's 3rd month, she said something to Li Min one evening that he stored carefully in the back of his mind. "I cannot stay at home forever, Min. I need something that is mine again." He looked at her across the dinner table, their daughter sleeping in the next room, the house quiet and warm, and said with complete seriousness, "When Hannah turns 1, I will open a boutique for you. Proper one. Whatever you want it to look like." She stared at him. "You're serious?" "When am I not serious?" She smiled, wide, real, the kind she could not control. "Min, I mean it," he said. 1 year. She believed him, because he had never promised her something he did not intend to deliver. That was one of the most solid things about him. His word was not decorative. But before Hannah's first birthday arrived, before the boutique was anything more than a warm and beautiful possibility, Bianca was pregnant again. They both went quiet when the test confirmed it. Then they looked at each other and started laughing, that slightly helpless kind of laughter that arrives when life simply does what it wants regardless of your schedule. "Okay," Bianca said, wiping her eyes. "Okay. Once this one is born, family planning. I cannot do this a 3rd time." "Agreed," Li Min said, though he was still smiling. Their son was born the following winter. They named him Jihoon. He came into the world quieter than his sister, but with enormous dark eyes that seemed to be studying everything carefully from the first moment. An expression so familiar on his father's face that Bianca burst out laughing in the delivery room, exhausted and overwhelmed and deeply, deeply in love. Nobody warns you about the particular kind of exhaustion that follows 2 babies in quick succession. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, like a tide that comes in while you are sleeping, and when you finally look up, you realize the shore is somewhere far behind you. Bianca had always been someone who took pride in how she presented herself to the world. Not vanity, something deeper than that. She had understood, from a young age, that the way you carried yourself said something about how you saw your own value. She had always dressed with intention, kept her long curly hair moisturized and styled, worn perfume even on ordinary days because it was one of the small luxuries that made her feel like herself. But after Jihoon's birth, something shifted. At first it was understandable, newborn weeks are brutal, and no one emerges from them immaculate. She stopped doing her hair because there was no time. She stopped dressing carefully because by the time she managed it, someone needed feeding or changing. She stopped wearing the lingerie she had once kept folded neatly in the top drawer and started living in soft, forgiving clothes that asked nothing of her body. The weight came gradually. She was tired, always tired, and food became comfort in a way it had never been before. She ate what was available, what was fast, what made her feel momentarily less depleted. She told herself, as so many women do, that she would get back to it later. Once the babies were older. Once she was sleeping more. Once things settled. But later kept moving. She would catch her reflection sometimes and tell herself, quietly but firmly, "After all, I'm already married. My husband loves me. He married me for who I am, not what I look like." And this was true. Lee Min did love her. The problem was that she had slowly, without quite meaning to, stopped showing up for him the way she once had. Not dramatically, not unkindly, simply less. The small rituals had disappeared. She no longer waited up for him when he came home late. She no longer reached for him first. She stopped asking about his day with that particular attention she had once given, the kind where she actually listened, held the thread of what he was saying, followed up. She was in the marriage, technically, but she had become a ghost in her own intimacy with him. Lee Min said nothing. He was not a man who expressed things easily. She knew this about him. He processed quietly, internally, in long silences that could be mistaken for contentment. He watched her. He noticed everything. And slowly, the place in his chest where his feelings for her lived grew colder. Not from cruelty, not from indifference to what she carried, but from a longing that had nowhere to go and a distance he did not know how to close without causing pain. He thought about saying something. Many times. He would come home and see her on the couch in her loose clothes, hair piled on top of her head without care, not looking up from her phone when he came in, and he would feel something hollow where warmth used to be. He would open his mouth. Then he would look at her. Tired, stretched, doing everything alone while he was gone, and he would close it again. He told himself he did not want to hurt her. He told himself she was doing her best. Both of these things were true, but silence is never neutral, and loneliness inside a marriage is the kind that eats the quietest. Her name was Amanda, and Lee Min met her on an ordinary Tuesday morning. He had been walking from his car to the building, a route he took every day without thinking, when she appeared from the coffee shop next door, moving quickly, head down, and walked directly into him. Coffee tipped. She caught it before it fell. "Sorry," she said, looking up. She was young, early 20s maybe, dark skin, bright eyes, wearing a yellow dress that seemed to belong to an entirely different kind of morning than the one Lee Min was having. She was the kind of beautiful that was obvious without being self-conscious about it. "No damage done," he said, and kept walking. But she was there the next morning too. And the one after. The coffee shop was her daily stop. She noticed him noticing her. Women always notice that. And she held his gaze one day instead of looking away. They started talking. Small things at first. What floor did he work on? What did he do? Was the coffee there always this good? It was nothing. It was something. He told himself it was nothing. The late-night calls began 3 weeks in. He would wait until Bianca was asleep, which did not take long. She fell into sleep quickly those days, deeply, immediately, and he would take his phone to the balcony and close the glass door softly behind him. He and Amanda talked for hours sometimes. She was uncomplicated in the way people are when you do not yet know them well enough to see their edges. She laughed at things. She asked questions about him. She made him feel, for stretches of an hour or two, like someone whose presence in the world still registered. He knew what he was doing. He was not a man who deceived himself. He knew this was wrong. He knew it was a betrayal he could not undo simply by naming it. But he was also a man who had been starving quietly for over a year, and hunger has a way of dissolving the most principled intentions. They became what they became. He did not examine it too closely. He kept the two halves of his life sealed from each other with the same precision he applied to everything, clean compartments, no bleed-through. He brought Amanda to restaurants on the other side of the city. He kept their communication on a second phone that he carried in his coat pocket. He was careful. He was always careful. He was also, somewhere beneath the carefulness, deeply ashamed. But shame without action is just another form of silence. The idea of going to the salon came to Bianca while she was watching herself in the bathroom mirror one afternoon. She had been about to put her hair up again, the same loose pile she wore every day, when she stopped and really looked at herself. Not the passing, functional glance she had become used to, but an actual look. Her hair had not been properly done in months. Her face looked tired in a way that sleep alone was not fixing. She was wearing a faded shirt she had owned since before her first pregnancy. She stood there for a long moment. Then she called the nanny, told her she would be back in 2 hours, and left the house for the first time without a baby on her hip or a purpose other than herself. The salon was warm and smelled of products and the low, busy sound of women talking. She found a seat and settled in, feeling something loosen in her shoulders that she had not realized was tight. The woman who sat down next to her a few minutes later was young and striking. Bright energy, expensive nails, the easy confidence of someone who had never quite been told no. She was on the phone almost immediately, and her voice carried. Bianca was not listening at first. She was scrolling through reference pictures on her own phone, thinking about layers. But then she heard, "He took me to Signora last weekend. You know the one in Gangnam? The waitlist is 6 months long. Baby, 6 months. Something in Bianca's attention shifted. Not fully, just an edge of it. He sends me something every single day. Every single day. I checked my account this morning and nearly fell out of bed." The woman laughed. Her friend on the other end said something. The woman laughed again. "He treats me like a queen, honestly. I don't even have to ask for anything. He anticipates. You know that kind of man? Rare. So rare." Bianca was looking at her phone but no longer seeing it. "He's busy this week, but he called me last night. Late. We talked until nearly 2, he said, and then she said his name. Lee Min. The sound of it in someone else's mouth, said with that warmth, that ownership, it moved through Bianca like cold water. She did not move. She did not speak. She sat completely still and kept her eyes on her phone, and let every word that followed land on her like slow, deliberate blows. The woman spoke freely, easily, with the unconscious generosity of someone who had no idea she was being heard by the one person in the world for whom every word was devastating. The woman did not know. That was clear. She was simply talking about a man she was seeing. She had no reason to believe his wife was sitting 18 inches away, hands folded in her lap, learning the shape of a betrayal she had not let herself suspect. When Bianca finally spoke, it was to the stylist who had come over to check on her weight. "Actually," Bianca said quietly, "I think I need to reschedule." She gathered her things, paid a cancellation fee she did not argue about, and walked out. She sat in her car for 11 minutes without starting the engine. Then she drove home. Lee Min came home at his usual time. The house was quiet. The nanny had put the children to bed early. The kitchen light was on. He set down his keys and coat and walked through to the living room, where Bianca was sitting on the sofa, not doing anything, just sitting, hands in her lap, facing the door. He stopped when he saw her expression. "Bianca. Come sit with me," she said. Her voice was very calm. That was what frightened him more than anything else could have. He sat. He waited. "I went to the salon today," she began, "and the woman who sat next to me was on the phone with her friend." He was very still. She was talking about a man she's been seeing, how he takes her to restaurants, how he calls her late at night, how generous he is with her. A beat. "She said your name, Min." The silence that followed was complete. "She didn't know I was there," Bianca continued, in the same quiet, terrible voice. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just talking about you the way someone talks about a man they're proud of. You should have heard how she spoke about you. She really thinks you're something. Li Min set his elbows on his knees and pressed his mouth against his clasped hands. He did not look away from her. That much, at least, he gave her. What happened to us? Bianca asked. Tell me the truth. You owe me that. And because he did owe her that, and because he was underneath everything, still the man who had promised her honesty, he told her. He did not make excuses. He did not minimize. He told her what he had felt in the months before it started. The distance, the silence, the sense that she had moved somewhere he could not reach and left no way in. He told her he had been wrong not to say something. He told her he had been a coward in the exact way that cowardice looks most respectable, polite and quiet and ruinous. You stopped dressing for yourself. For me. For us, he said, and his voice was low. You stopped taking care of yourself the way you always had. I know how that sounds. I know you were exhausted. I know you were doing everything. But you, the way you used to be, I missed you. I missed my wife. And I didn't know how to say it without making you feel like I was punishing you for having our children. Bianca was looking at him very carefully. Her jaw was set. And instead of saying anything, she said slowly, You went and found someone else. Yes, that was wrong. Yes, it was. She stood up and walked to the mirror on the far wall. It was a long mirror, full length, framed in dark wood. She had picked it out herself when they first moved in. She looked at herself in it for a long time. Li Min watched her. He did not say anything. He watched her look at her hair, the neglected length of it, the way it had lost its shape. He watched her take in the clothes she was wearing, loose and shapeless and functional. He watched her see what he had been too afraid to tell her, and what she had been too busy to see herself. When she turned back to him, something in her expression had changed. Not broken, reorganized. I have 2 beautiful children, she said. And I told myself that was enough reason to stop trying. That love was supposed to be unconditional, so I didn't have to put in effort. She paused. That was also wrong. Li Min looked at his wife, really looked at her, and felt something crack open in his chest that he had thought he had sealed permanently. I'm not going anywhere, Bianca said. But this is not over, and you are going to end it. Tonight. It is already over, he said. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once and walked to their bedroom and closed the door. He sat in the living room alone for a long time. Then he picked up his phone. He met Amanda the next afternoon, in a quiet cafe far from both their usual places. She arrived looking slightly uncertain. He had not given much away on the call, just that he needed to see her. She sat down across from him with her coffee and her bright, expectant eyes, and he looked at her and felt, very clearly and cleanly, that she deserved honesty. I'm ending this, he said. She stared at him. I'm sorry, he continued. I was not honest with you from the beginning about what I was actually capable of offering. That was unfair to you. What happened? She asked. Her voice was careful. My wife found out. A silence. Then, so this is just because she found out? No, he said. This is because I love my wife. What happened between us was real to me in the moment. But it happened because I failed my marriage, not because my marriage failed me. Those are different things. I was wrong to involve you in that. Amanda set her coffee down. She looked at him for a long time with an expression he could not quite name. You love her, she said finally. Not a question. I never stopped. She nodded slowly. Then she said very quietly, You should have said that before. Yes, he agreed. I should have. She picked up her bag. She looked at him once more at the door. A clean, final look, and then she left. He sat with his coffee until it was cold. Then he went home. Bianca started with the gym. Not dramatically. She was not a woman who did anything dramatically. She simply set an alarm for 5:30 in the morning, 3 days a week, and got up when it rang. The nanny came early on those mornings. Li Min, who was already awake, watched her leave the first time with her gym bag over one shoulder and her long curly hair pulled back into a high ponytail, and felt something pull at him that he had not allowed himself to feel in a long time. The change was slow and cumulative, which is the only way real change ever is. She started caring again about what she put on in the mornings. Not for him, she made this point clearly and quietly, but for herself. Because she had realized, in the days after their confrontation, that she had stopped being present in her own life. The marriage was one symptom, but the deeper thing was that she had dissolved into motherhood so completely that she had temporarily stopped existing as a person with desires and aesthetics and appetites of her own. So she reclaimed them, one small thing at a time. She went back to the salon, a different one, smaller, further from the house, and spent 3 hours having her hair done properly. When she walked out, her long curly hair fell down her back in the way it always had when she had taken care of it. Full and glossy, a few strands framing her face. She drove home and went straight to the bathroom mirror and looked at herself for a long time. "There you are," she said softly to her own reflection. She started dressing again with intention. She started wearing her perfume. She started cooking meals she actually enjoyed rather than whatever was fastest. She started sleeping earlier so she could wake up restored rather than depleted. She started reading again. She had always loved it. For an hour at night after the children were asleep. She started, gradually and unapologetically, returning to herself. Li Min noticed everything. He was careful not to make it about him. He understood, without being told, that she was not doing any of this for his benefit, and that saying so would be both reductive and beside the point. But he watched. He absorbed. And the thing he felt growing daily was not just physical attraction, though that was present undeniably, but something deeper and more accurate: recognition. She was becoming legible to him again. And the reading of her, the particular pleasure of knowing a person who is fully present inside their own skin, undid something in him that he had been holding rigid for a very long time. He started coming home earlier. Small things at first, half an hour, sometimes an hour. He would find reasons. There were always reasons if you wanted to find them. He would bring food from a restaurant she liked, or pick something up for the children, or simply sit at the kitchen counter while she cooked and talk to her the way they used to talk. Easily, about nothing, about everything. She let him back in slowly. She did not perform forgiveness. She earned it back from herself on her own timeline, and gave it to him when she was ready. This was the thing he respected most about her. She was never cruel about the wound, but she did not pretend it had not happened. "I'm not there yet," she told him one evening honestly, when he reached for her hand across the table. "But I'm getting there." "I know," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him. Then she turned her hand over and closed her fingers around his. Hannah had turned 1 3 months ago. Jihoon was 4 months behind. Li Min came home on a Wednesday evening with a folder under his arm. Bianca was in the kitchen, Jihoon on her hip, Hannah toddling in circles around her feet. She was wearing a deep green wrap dress, her hair loose and curly and falling over one shoulder, a small gold hoop in each ear. She looked exactly like herself, the most beautiful version of herself. He set the folder on the kitchen counter and slid it toward her. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." She shifted Jihoon to her other hip and picked up the folder. Inside, a set of architectural drawings, a lease agreement, a business registration form with her name already printed on it. She looked up at him. "The space is on Cheongdam," he said. "Corner unit. 300 square meters. Full renovation, whatever you want it to look like, that is entirely yours to decide. I had 3 designers contact me. Their portfolios are at the back if you want to look." Bianca stared at him. Jihoon reached up and grabbed a fistful of her hair. She didn't notice. Min, I promised you, he said simply. I always meant it. She looked down at the drawings. She had spent 2 years imagining a space like this, the exact lighting she wanted, the way the racks would be arranged, the kind of clothes she would carry. She had filed it away under later, under once things settle, under someday. Someday was apparently Wednesday. She looked up at her husband, at the serpent tattoo just visible above his collar, at the small silver ring in his ear, at the expression on his face that was carefully neutral in the way it always was when he was waiting on something that mattered enormously to him, and felt the last of the wall she had been keeping come down very quietly. She set the folder down and walked the 3 steps between them and put her free arm around his neck. He held her and Jihoon both, and pressed his mouth against the top of her head, and stood there for a long time. You have to let me be involved in the renovation, she said into his shoulder. I assumed, he said. I'd be concerned if you weren't. She laughed, the real kind, the unguarded kind. Hannah, who had been watching all of this from the kitchen floor with her serious, intelligent eyes, stood up carefully on her small legs and walked over and pressed herself against both of their knees with great authority. Lee Min reached down and picked her up with one arm so he was holding them both. It was the fullest he had felt in years. The boutique opened on the first Saturday of April. Bianca had named it Lumière, the French word for light, because that was what she wanted every woman who walked through the door to carry out with her. She had designed the interior herself. Warm cream walls, curved racks in burnished gold, a fitting room with floor-to-ceiling mirrors and soft, honest lighting. Fresh flowers changed weekly. A small sitting area near the back for women who needed to think before they decided. It was full from the moment the doors opened. Lee Min stood near the back with Jihoon in his arms, Hannah holding his free hand, watching his wife move through the space she had built with the ease of someone who had been doing this their whole life. She was wearing something she had chosen from her own racks. A fitted ivory blazer, her long curly hair loose around her shoulders, her posture exactly the way it was when she felt fully like herself. A woman stopped to compliment the dress she was wearing. Bianca smiled and told her where to find it. Another woman asked about the owner. Bianca said simply, "That's me." Lee Min watched her say it, watched the particular quiet pride in her face, and felt something settle permanently in his chest. He had nearly let her go. Not in the grand way people mean when they say that, not dramatically, not with shouting or paperwork. He had nearly let her go in the slow, invisible way that is far more common and far more devastating. By not reaching for her when the distance grew. By choosing silence over honesty and comfort over courage. He had been wrong. She had been wrong too in her own way. Marriage was like that, the blame rarely lived in only one address. But they had chosen, both of them, to come back. Hannah tugged his hand. He looked down at his daughter, serious eyes, her mother's mouth, and crouched to her level. Is Mama happy? She asked, with the directness of a 3-year-old. He looked across the room at his wife, laughing at something a customer had said, completely at home in the world she had made. Very, he said. Hannah considered this with great seriousness. Then she nodded, satisfied, and went back to studying the gold rack nearest to her with obvious ambitions. Lee Min stood back up. Jihoon had fallen asleep against his shoulder. The shop was full of warm noise and light. Bianca caught his eye across the room. She smiled, small, private, the one she kept only for him. He smiled back. Outside, the city moved the way it always did. Fast and indifferent, full of strangers doing their own private surviving. But in here, inside this boutique that smelled of fresh flowers and the perfume of women trying things on, something very specific and very good was happening. A man and his wife were finding each other. Again. For good this time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to leave us a comment. Also share and subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell to get notified when a new story comes up. Don't forget to tell us where